again. I'm Vinnie Politan. Here's what's topping our legal news for this hour. Armed with the support of the White House, abortion foes in the House of Representatives have just passed a measure making it a federal crime to harm a fetus. Supporters call it an effort to get tough on criminals who harm unborn children. But opponents say the real goal is to have a fetus declared a separate person with an eye toward rolling back abortion rights. The measure still must pass in the Senate, where it needs 60 votes. Well, now you can get involved with our 13th Juror News question of the day. Are abortion rights being threatened by current legislation? Right now, 68% of you are saying yes. Only 32% of you are saying no. You can vote by logging on to courttv.com. Progress was made today in finding a jury for the trial of 14-year-old Nathaniel Brazill in West Palm Beach, Florida. He's charged with the murder in the shooting death last May of a middle school teacher. Over the last 2 days, the judge has whittled the jury pool down to 60 people. On Monday, prosecutors and defense attorneys will question potential jurors directly. Court TV will cover the trial live. A federal judge in Washington clears the way for the Navy to resume bombing exercises on the island of Vieques, rejecting the government of Puerto Rico's request for an injunction. The Commonwealth maintained the naval drills threaten public health and violate a newly enacted anti-noise law. The Navy said it would resume training exercises on Vieques as early as tomorrow. A former girlfriend is helping prosecutors paint accused Alabama church bomber Thomas Blanton as a violent racist. Waylene Vaughn testified today that Blanton tried to run down a black pedestrian in the 60s and claimed to have attacked others with acid. But she says he never talked about the 1963 bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, in which 4 girls died. Many more details about the Jonbenet Ramsey investigation are about to go public. A former investigator for the Boulder County, Colorado District Attorney's Office says he plans to release crime scene photos despite objections from the DA. Retired Detective Lou Smith says some of the information indicates an intruder, not Jonbenet's parents, killed the 6-year-old child beauty queen. Actress Halle Berry and her husband are suing the supermarket tabloid The Star. This week's issue claims that the newlywed couple's marriage is on the rocks. The suit, which claims libel, invasion of privacy, and infliction of emotional distress, seeks $5 million in damages. Well, that's the latest from the Court TV News Center for today. I'm Vinnie Politan. Now back to closing arguments with Ricky Kleeman in the studio. Ricky?
Thank you so much, Vinnie. A Nevada jury is now deliberating the fate of Margaret Rudin. She is accused of killing her 5th husband, so she could get her share of his $11 million.
If that's all you knew, that's explainable. You can explain the blood in other ways, okay? It's like everything in the circumstances of this case, any one thing you can explain, but you can't explain all of these things. You can't do it believably or credibly. You've got to look at the evidence as a whole. You know, you can take it in a vacuum and say, I'm just going to look at this, okay, here's the explanation. I'm just going to look at this thing, okay, here's the explanation. You get up to the 3rd or 4th thing and you start going like, whoa, wait a minute. You know, okay, this. But now what about this and this and this? You know, you can look at this, but you put the head together with the other things. We'll come back to that in just a second. The telephone calls. Oh, now we got telephone calls. They said she never did call. That's not what the witnesses said. What the witnesses said is she never called me and asked how the investigation was going. And who are the witnesses saying this? That was Janice and Barry and the ones that were involved in the fact-finding of the case, trying to find Ron. Were there telephone calls? Yes, there were. I mean, we know there were telephone calls. Hannah had called Margaret Rudin. Janice had called her. Barry had called her. There was attempts to get a hold of Margaret Rudin and talk to her on the 29th. There was a conversation with her on the 29th. Detective Janice testified to that. The point is, in all the conversations they had with her, she didn't say, how's it going? Have you found my husband yet? It was them trying to get information out of her. And what was she giving them? Misinformation. Or not saying information. The point is that no time did Margaret Rudin call Janice, Barry, Vaquero, or Ramos to say, what's going on? What have you found? What do you know? How can I help? Even when they go notify her, we found your husband's remains at Nelson's Landing. And what is the most natural thing for a person to say? What happened? What happened? What happened to him? How did he die? Did he suffer? What did you find? Who did this thing? But what do we hear from Margaret? I'm a little busy right now. Can you come back later? Same thing she told him basically on the phone when they called to go out to do the death notification.
Well, as I say, he's not as funny as I thought he was going to be, but he sure is good. And I've always thought Chris Owens is good. He has a nice manner, he's very gentle, and he's, you know, he's a factual kind of guy, kind of tells it like it is. Well, I want to talk about the law with David Feiga and see if the two of us as lawyers can make this kind of just the way it is. You and I may be two of the only people in America who looked at this verdict slip. This is the verdict slip. I don't expect you to be able to read it, but this is it. But I can give you a little thought about why we're upset, even if you can't read it. Down here, this is the murder count. It's like, is she guilty? Oh, aren't you good, Nancy? Is she guilty of this, 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 guilty of this? Not guilty. That's really what it is, right?
That's exactly what it is.
So when I saw it come into my packet, I mean, it was a passing thought. I said, man, I would have never lived with this verdict slip. The first thing you said to me today was, what do you think about this verdict? And I knew exactly where you were. Tell our viewers what's wrong with it.
It's in some ways a ridiculous lawyer point, but it's one of the things that separates the people who just kind of go with the way things are and the people who jump up and scream about things. And when I look at a verdict sheet that has a little bitty not guilty all the way at the bottom, it bothers me. There's no reason you have to have a teeny little not guilty all the way at the bottom after guilty of first degree with a weapon, guilty of first degree without a weapon, guilty of second degree. I mean, it's just a silly thing, but, you know, psychology goes into these forms.
Well, that's why it's not silly.
There's no reason.
You could have, for example, you could have not guilty first.
At the top. I think that's right.
Or you could at least have a separation somewhere down there. You know, I'll give you a real good story that you'll like. There's a great lawyer out of Virginia and Washington, D.C. named John Lowe. Teaches a lot of lawyers around the country. John Lowe has gotten judges to give a verdict sheet that says guilty, not guilty, and unable to reach a verdict.
That's wonderful.
I mean, that's extraordinary that you could actually get it on the box. Because, as John Lowe says, it is legal. Because if a jury cannot reach a verdict, they are duty-bound to not reach a verdict.
And I'm sure judges go crazy because that's the one thing judges don't want. They want that verdict. And, you know, it's one of those great things where there is no reason that you can't at least ask and say, hey, judge, come on, it should be not guilty first. They've got to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. It shouldn't be that the last thing a jury sees is not guilty because, you know, psychology does play a role in these things.
That's why I love you, David. Look at how passionate you get about a piece of paper. This is so much fun. We are going to take a break. The jury's been deliberating about an hour. It's time for the news. We're going to be back with much more of the prosecutor's rebuttal closing argument.
The overwhelming majority of victims of police brutality are African Americans. Police brutality is a cancer that this country can no longer tolerate. Someone has to take the first step. I started a fast and prayer vigil. As far as I'm concerned, today's police misconduct is worse than the violent hate crimes of the 1950s and 60s. I am Dick Gregory, and I am taking a stand.
On the next Crier Live.
The mother-son con team of Santi and Kenneth Kimes were convicted of killing a New York socialite. Tonight, Sante's other son, Kent, tells us how he got away.
Catherine Crier Live, tonight at 5.
One time a victim told me, you have the heart of a warrior. I believe that all victims have to be warriors, and that everyone, the good and the bad, deserve final justice. Watch America's Most Wanted, Final Justice.
You'll find them in every town, city, and suburb across Pennsylvania. Different people of different ages, from different walks of life, who all share the same belief that auto insurance rates are just too high, and it's time someone turned things around. That someone is finally here. Presenting Unitrin Direct, a company dedicated to driving down the high cost of auto insurance and helping drivers save up to 20% or more a year.
How much can Unitrin Direct save you? Give us a call for a free rate quote. No pressure, no obligation. Unitrin Direct's low rates could save you hundreds of dollars a year with no loss in coverage. You'll even have your own dedicated team of representatives to look out for your best interests. And remember, the Unitrin family of insurance companies has more than 70 years of experience and over $5 billion in assets. so you can count on us to be there when you need us. Call Unitrin Direct today and see just how much you could save.
You want savings, you want service, you want Unitrin Direct. Call 1-866-494-2886 now.
Way out.
I could dance all night back then. So I was thrilled when my oldest grandson wanted to follow in my footsteps. But before our first lesson, I had a heart attack. I needed to lower my cholesterol.
How will you take care of your high cholesterol and heart disease?
I tried diet and exercise, but it was still too high. So I asked my doctor about Zocor. He told me Zocor, along with diet, can really get your cholesterol down. And Zocor's proven to significantly reduce the risk among people with high cholesterol and heart disease. Now my cholesterol is right where it should be.
Zocor is a prescription medicine and is not for everyone, including women who are nursing, pregnant or may become pregnant, or people with liver problems. Your doctor may do blood tests to check for liver problems. Because serious side effects can result, tell your doctor about any muscle pain or weakness you experience and about any medicines you are taking. For more information about Zocor, talk to your doctor.
Be good to yourself. It's your future. Be there.
I hadn't been paid child support for 13 years. 13 years is a long time. I was really frustrated one day and I went online, I typed in child support, and up popped the website, Support Kids. And I wrote them a letter and I had a response like the next week.
Support Kids has collected over $60 million in past due child support. If you have a court order for child support and you're not receiving welfare, call 1-800-801-KIDS and get the support you deserve.
A deranged kidnapper confuses fact with fantasy.
He referred to himself as the Mouse King 4 times.
What are you doing?
Profiler, tonight at 7 on Court TV.
As you can see from our jury clock, the jury has been out now. Evan, I have to look at it. I got to look over there. 1 hour, 5 minutes, and as always, we're monitoring the courtroom. We're continuing to look at the closing arguments you have not seen. This is Chris Owens in rebuttal. He's talking about one of those witnesses everybody wants to talk about. Yehuda Sharon.
Too much to explain. You can explain one, you explain two, maybe three. You can't explain hundreds, and that's why those things aren't talked about. Because the more you got to explain, the more ridiculous the explanations get. The strength of this case, the state's case, is in its diversity. You know, we heard Margaret's case. We got a lot of her friends coming out, people talking, you know, oh, I saw Margaret that night, you know. Okay, the state's case. We got people from all walks of life. Didn't know each other. We even got a family member. What's the word they use with regard to Donna? It's revealing. She betrayed. She's a betrayer. She turned against her family. She's a betrayer. Okay, how can you betray something when there's nothing to betray? You know, Donna had a little talk with her son about morality and ethics and things like that. It was a hard decision for her to make. You know, that was her motivation. To the family, she was a turncoat. Why? Because she snitched off Margaret. How did she snitch off Margaret? Because there was something to snitch off there. See, Margaret tried to call her and talk to her about it, but she wasn't going to lie about that. She wasn't going to lie about murder even for her family. Augustine Lovato, you got the police, you got the forensic evidence. These people don't know each other. The trustees, they're coming from different directions in this case. And they're all, you know, you can say, you know, they're liars. They're ex-felons. They're just money grubbers. I mean, hey, they're even going after Patricia Brown today on this thing. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, they're all doing the same thing. You can castigate them all you want. They're all pointing in their testimony at one person, Margaret Rudin. They didn't get together and have a meeting. You know, okay, you're going to say this, and okay, Harold, you're going to handle this part. No, they don't. That's the strength here. All walks of life, all circumstances, all with a little piece of this thing, all making a picture of Margaret Rudin as the murderer. That's the strength. So what happened here? Anger, the viciousness that Ron talks about and forecasted in his directive about Margaret. Vicious and violent, not getting what she wants, not going to get it maybe, tired of waiting. Now it's my turn, my time to control. Wait till he goes to sleep. Goes in the bedroom, up around the side, gun down at the side of that gun she'd had all that time. Comes around. approaching from the back, logical, and then leaning over and boom, boom, boom. Coming around the front, 2 shots in the front. What am I going to do? Got the body, got to do something, got to get rid of it, need some help. Getting a hold of people, need an alibi, over to CNC tax is the weird thing there. I've been here all night, you see me, right, blah, blah. Coming back, got to get rid of the body. I got this trunk, pull this over, we can put it in there. Got to get the trunk out there. Got to get rid of Ron's car. Let's run Ron's car over the Crazy Horse. We'll make them look guilty for a while. That'll get some mileage out of that. We'll send the police running around on that thing. Got to burn the body. I shot him in the head. We've got to get this thing burned up. Here, Yehuda. Here's some lamp oil. He goes, gets the van. He's out. He's heading down. Oh, by the way, Yehuda, got to ditch the gun. Yehuda, I'll take care of that for you, Margaret. No problem. Okay. Out goes the gun. And they're off, and they're out to the lake, and there's a fire. What they don't know is that, like Mr. DeHaan told Tori Johnson years ago, you get that kind of fire, it's been his experience that the neck can lose integrity. And as the trunk's burned down, the body fat's going in there with the wood, the other wicking material, the head rolls down the hill. Bullet hole is still apparent. Projectiles recoverable, unfortunately for Margaret. What about the gun? Well, what about the gun? On the way out there, of course, lamp oil, let's get the real thing, gasoline, something that we can count on. And the gun, most logical thing would be to throw it right out in the water right there, but we know that doesn't happen because the gun's found in another place. And it has been wrapped up a lot of times. And why? Because at some point, Mr. Yehuda Sharon decided back in '97 that he wanted to make some money. And so he goes into Earl Monzi's office and he says, for $1 million, I can break this case wide open. Okay, and there's a discussion there. Okay, I'll take $500,000, but not a penny less. What on earth did he have that he was willing to trade for that $500,000? Well, he never said. And it never got far enough to figure that out. What he didn't know, what the state didn't know, is that the gun had been found out in that lake about 7 months prior, and it was a few weeks later that Tori Johnson made the mental connection, did the test, and sure enough, it's about time the police got a break in the case. It's something that hadn't been destroyed, cut in their favor, and that's what happened. And, it's only fair in light of all the stuff in this case that they caught that kind of a break at that point in time.
Speaking of break, we're taking a break, and we'll be back with more of Chris Owen's closing argument.
Tonight on The System.
It's the most dangerous operation in law enforcement.
Real cops.
Just like swimming in a shark-infested pool.
Informants.
Please be careful.
And private eyes.
He's dealing with all elements of life.
Take you through the days and nights.
Get out real slow, mister.
The risks and rewards.
Guys are knocking me around, throwing me to the ground.
Of going undercover.
As long as I can help put some bad guys in jail, that's why I do it.
Undercover on The System. Premieres tonight at 10, only on Court TV.
You have reached a gecko. You probably wanted Geico, which could save you hundreds on car insurance. Don't be embarrassed. Happens all the time. Have a nice day.
Geico. A 15-minute call could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Car insurance bills getting too hot to handle? Geico. A 15-minute call could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
When we asked some denture wearers why they don't use an adhesive, they didn't have a whole lot to say.
I don't need it. My dentures fit fine, thanks. I've not had a problem in 15 years.
But then they tried Fix-It-Dent, and they couldn't say enough.
Makes them feel a lot more natural. I just plain forget I have them. They actually fit better.
That's because Fix-It-Dent gives even the best-fitting dentures a better fit.
It just proves you never know until you try.
Fix-It-Dent, and forget it.
Did you know that scientists have discovered the hairless gene? If you have thinning hair, call 1-800-HAIR-CLUB now and get your copy of our latest report. You can read about exclusive interviews with doctors and scientists and learn about the different options that Hair Club has available today in the fight against hair loss. Hair Club is the one source for hair loss information.
Call 1-800-HAIR-CLUB now and get this booklet or CD-ROM free.
Now that I've got my hair back, I'm glad I made that call.
Call 1-800-HAIR-CLUB today.
Not all women are satisfied with their bust size, but we're not left with many safe options. Introducing Bloussant, an all-natural herbal breast enhancement tablet that will increase your bust line by 1/2 to 2 cup sizes in just weeks. And most importantly, clinical studies have proven it's safe. Bloussant's professionally formulated breast enhancer stimulates and regenerates the growth process in an all-natural and clinically proven safe method. Bloussant has been increasing bust lines in Europe for years, and now it's available in America. It's all natural, it's safe, and it's guaranteed. If you're not completely happy with the Bloussant results, just return the unused portion for a full product refund. Why wait? With one phone call, you'll be on your way to the new you.
Call 1-800-356-9981 for Bloussant right now.
It's been called one of the best shows TV has ever aired. Well-acted and tough-minded, flat-out riveting entertainment. And now you can see the Emmy Award-winning series Homicide: Life on the Street, weeknights at 11, exclusively on Court TV.
Welcome back. I'm Ricky Kleeman. Let's look at one more piece of Chris Owen's rebuttal, closing argument.
Was there a cooperative effort between the police and the trustees? Of course there was. Is that a weird thing? No. Civil and criminal mix up all the time. You got DUIs, people sue, casinos, people. Civil suits are impacted by things the police do. Police get subpoenaed, we get subpoenaed, the court gets subpoenaed. All kinds of things happen in those cases. It's good police tactics to share information. If they didn't get information from all the sources, Ms. Pitaro would be up here saying, you mean you never talked to Mr. Levesque? How could you do that kind of a shoddy investigation? Of course they shared information and things like that. And because of that, they were able to develop the case that they were able to develop at that point in time and continued to get information with regard to that case. And because of that, the case is now presented to you. Now, did they want Margaret to profit from this shooting? No. I mean, who would want that? Once you decide that Margaret is the murderer, nobody's going to want her to be able to get a bunch of money and stuff. Ron certainly didn't, and nobody else did either. And so you're going to start handing out cars and things to her? No. What you do is you have a hearing. And they had a hearing, and it was in front of a judge. And she got the same kind of a fair hearing there that she's going to get here. And the fair hearing here is going to mean that justice is going to be done finally and ultimately in this case. And that's going to mean justice for Ron Rudin and justice for the state of Nevada. You know, I'm not humbled by Margaret Rudin. The evidence in this case indicates that Margaret Rudin is a murderer. The thing to be humbled about in this system is the system of justice that we have and the fact that sometimes murderers will and can be held accountable under the law. That's the respect that we should all have. That's that system of law and the respect that you need to apply now. We've all talked about the reasonable doubt instruction. In the end, what it will be for each of you is what you feel inside. And you can say, quantify it, this and that, whatever. The instruction tells you that. If after hearing all the evidence in this case, you feel that you have an abiding conviction of the guilt of the defendant, then the instruction says you don't have a reasonable doubt. You can have all kinds of doubts in life, but a doubt to be reasonable in the context of this case means it has to be actual. It can't be based upon mere possibility or speculation, or like Margaret told him, it's out there, there's things you don't know. She tells the police, or like Mr. Amador was saying, take a look at it, you'll see something in there. I don't know what, but it's in there, No. It has to be actual. It has to be an actual doubt, and that's not here in this case. Ladies and gentlemen, after you examine all of the evidence in this case fully and discuss it among yourselves, you will find that you see that pattern in there, if you haven't seen it already, that conclusively shows that Margaret Rudin is the killer of Ron Rudin in this case. And you will find, after discussing it among yourselves, that you do not have a reasonable doubt. You will find that you have an abiding conviction of the guilt of Margaret Rudin, based upon the evidence in this case. And that will allow you to come back and return a verdict of guilty as charged. And that will be a verdict that you can feel comfortable about and feel that you have done the right thing and the just thing in this case. Because, ladies and gentlemen, Margaret Rudin is guilty. She is guilty as charged. Thank you.
Well, there's no question he believes it. The question is whether the jury does. I'm here with David Feiger. You've been listening to David and me in the studio. We're going back out to our own Mary Jane Stevenson. Mary Jane, I know you said that Chris Owens was really funny. I really like his manner. I think he is just very personable, though I didn't get to see this really funny side of him, but we only saw parts of it.
Yeah, I don't think it comes across as well on the camera. Keep in mind, this was 10 o'clock at night last night. We were all punch drunk, but there was a whole group of people who thought afterward that his argument was just hilarious. And Gary Guyman even said he had never seen Chris be so funny. And it was really just sort of the way he was mocking the defense and mocking the defense theories, mocking Mike Amador, talking about deeds and papers flying all over the courtroom. And there was one part, I'm not sure if you got to see it, I hope you did, where he mocked the demonstration that John Mamet and Tom Pitaro had done when Tom Pitaro shoots John Mamet and he falls on the floor.
That also was funny.
Oh, yeah, and then Chris Owens does it. He shoots himself on the head and falls on the floor and gets back up and rolls his eyes like, what is this? And he's just he's so dry and he's so deadpan. And so when you hear him be sarcastic like this, it's very funny. And I think it came across much better in the courtroom at, of course, 10 o'clock at night when everyone's punch drunk.
Right. Well, David does actually a very good imitation of Chris, so I'm going to let you do this one for
Well, let me just say that, like, if you're a really on top of it defense lawyer, you'd be up objecting because he's denigrating the defense. But given that he's denigrating the defense, I thought he did a really funny job because he does have this ho-hum manner where he's like, well, I mean, she's guilty. I mean,
right.
He might as well have just been saying, it's obvious. I mean, why am I even here?
You're almost in your John Wayne voice, right? Guilty, Pilgrim.
Exactly. Why am I even here? I mean, you got the gun. You got the, he just sort of went on and on in this hilarious sort of manner, like, I don't even know why I have to deliver a summation in a courtroom. It should just be obvious to all of you.
I think you got him. Mary Jane, I want to also talk to you a little bit about John Mamet. I think John Mamet, my take from this afternoon is he's really mad at Michael Amador. He wouldn't say it, but you can tell that he's furious. That's my take.
Well, I think he was speaking, too, on behalf of his good friend, Tom Pitaro, who feels that his argument was hijacked to a certain extent.
It was.
And so, well, yeah, it was. But, I mean, I have to play devil's advocate here.
You may.
Amador went into the financial stuff and really bored everyone to tears, frankly. And then he said, here's the skull, and here's the bracelet. The bracelet is clearly identifying the skull. And Sharon Cooper and Harold Bascuti killed Ron Rudin. And really, that's as far as he went into the other evidence. Pitaro's a great orator. He could get up and steal the show. Everyone knew it. And I just don't think that it was so bad. I think what was bad was that Amador clearly made an agreement with the judge. And he sort of snubbed everyone in the courtroom when he went back after the sidebar and just did whatever the heck he wanted to do.
What a surprise, Mary Jane. I mean, no surprise to me. I mean, I'm the person who thought they were all crazy having him argue. And while saying that, I think I was as kind to him as I could possibly be today because I feel so sorry for him. I really do. I just think he is totally lost. David Feiger went in.
No, I just wanted in to say, look, MJ, it's not just about that. It's also that there's a client there. Margaret Rudin is sitting in the courtroom.
Margaret loved his argument. She told me.
Okay, I'm sorry that she did. I don't know if the jury did.
Well, I know. But she and Amador are two of a kind.
Right. Well, being two peas in an about-to-be-convicted pot is not probably my idea of fun. But, the problem from Pitaro's perspective is not just an ego one. It's that when somebody presages your argument, it's much less effective when you make it. And that's
true.
all.
And you're right. And frankly, he did suffer. Tom Pitaro suffered in that they allowed Amador to do this at all. But I think he suffered more that Amador went into all the real estate stuff, and he had his script on a screen. It was like karaoke. It was just missing the ball going across. And that part
That's very
was,
good,
was
MJ.
awful. Well, and you have to follow that when the jurors have had it. That's where Tom Pitaro suffered.
Sure.
Not because Amador said a little bit about the fugitive skull and the bracelet that identified it.
No, but that was the whole reason. I still say, Mary Jane, what were they thinking? I understand what they were thinking. They should have never had him argue.
And
I want to talk about the judge as well as talking about Margaret Rudin. You know, I'm a big fan of Judge Bonaventure's. I'm very open about that. I think, as I call him, he's an equal opportunity yeller. I think that he tries to call it as he sees it. He's my kind of guy. I would like to try cases before him because if you try a case well, you will do well with him. And I don't blame him for being over the top yesterday. I just don't.
You know, I don't either. Now that I've slept on it, and I think maybe it was a little much, and maybe he does too, but in the heat of the moment yesterday, you know, he was really mad. Michael Amador did snub the judge, and this was after 9 weeks of the judge having to rein him in and trying to do so in as fair a way as he could.
Right.
And so he lost it.
Well, I say I don't blame him. You know, it's been a long trial. Mary Jane, we're going to be with you watching for that verdict. You know what we want. Eddie Hayes and I wanted to come in tomorrow afternoon, and we have an extra hour tomorrow, so let's watch. We'll see. David Feiga, always a pleasure. Always get my juices going. You know, your passion here. Come back anytime. All right, that wraps up closing arguments and all my time with you for today. But please don't go away, because right now it is time to find out what is coming up next on Catherine Cryer Live. Catherine.
Well, Ricky, you know the judges rarely lose it. Rarely.
Not you, Catherine.
Never. Well, we have got a great show. Everyone has been following the case of Santi and Kenneth Kimes. Well, the other brother is in today. He's written a fascinating book, Son of a Grifter, and I'll talk to him about some still unsolved murders. Also, do you remember the story of the dog in the midst of road rage that got tossed into traffic and killed? Well, the man has been captured. The dog owner's here to talk about that. Michael Skakel's now in another courtroom. We'll tell you about that. And John Walsh is going international as he looks for a Mexican drug lord.
Good show, Catherine. We're going to get back to you in just a second. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern and Pacific, Court TV begins its coverage of a murder trial from Ohio. A man is accused of killing his wife because he feared he would lose everything in a divorce. But attorneys for Steve Bozick say the real killer is the dead woman's lover. That's coverage of the jealous husband murder trial beginning tomorrow. And, of course, don't worry, we're continuing to monitor the Las Vegas, Nevada court, where a jury is deciding if Margaret Rudin murdered her husband. I'm Ricky Kleeman. Eddie Hayes is going to be with me tomorrow, and I know we want that verdict tomorrow on our show, Closing Arguments. We'll be here, remember, 3 to 6 Eastern and Pacific on Fridays from now on. Thanks for watching. Please stay tuned for Catherine.